Okay, and we're live. We're trying something different today for Education Today. I'm your host, Scott Noons, and up for this People I Admire series on Education Today, I have with me my friend, my realtor, and mentor of sorts, Daniel Del Real. He's an accomplished father. First and foremost, I think that's a big one. He has a beautiful family, and he is quite successful in the real estate arena. He's a powerhouse with nearing or just topping 100 million in sales this year. So we'll be talking about that. Um, he's just so inspiring and motivational. I'll let you find out for yourself. And without further ado, Daniel Del Real. Hey, Daniel, how's it going tonight?
Good, Scott, man. Excited to be on the show, man. Excited to dive deeper in discussion with you, man.
Yeah, you get to see what things are like on my side. It's pretty cool.
Yeah,
I've been watching what you've been doing for a while, and our mutual buddy Joe too, and that really inspired me to really go deeper in the ed
hmm
game. I became passionate in education, and I thought, why can't I turn this into something more? I don't want to be just a teacher. I want to be an influencer. I want to change lives and uh,
hmm
do what, some great educators have done in the past, maybe even do a little bit more. And I want to invite you to tell your story. And I think before we get to that, though, just tell us who you are, where you're located, what you do, and a little
sure.
bit about yourself.
You got it, man. So I'm a real estate broker in town. I operate a real estate team. We've been a couple of the things we've done. We've helped over 300 families this year purchase a house, which is a pretty big milestone for us. The Wall Street Journal and Real Trends named me the #1 agent in the whole state, which is not bad from an immigrant kid from the Central Valley, right?
Right, not
um,
too
I,
bad.
I, I got into the real estate business after 4 years in the Air Force. My background was in law enforcement. My degree's in law enforcement, but here I am selling real estate. Right, it's part of being a lifelong learner. Right. I have married for the last 13 years to my wife Andrea, which you know, Scott. I got 3 kids, ranging from the ages to 11 down to 6, and been in the business for about 18 years now. So I'm active. I do a lot of weird things that other people wouldn't think as a hobby, like triathlons. But it keeps me healthy, it keeps me sane, it keeps me fit, and I just enjoy doing it.
Yeah, you were pretty hardcore with those triathlons. Where's the furthest you've ever traveled to for a triathlon?
Oh man, we've been all over the world. This year we went to New Zealand. We spent 2 weeks in New Zealand doing a Ironman out there. The year before that, we were in Dubai. We've done Kona, a bunch of different places. A bunch of cool places. We're going to Puerto Rico next year to do one there.
Yeah, so I eventually want to get to your success and how you got there, but I want to start
Mhm.
at your very roots. I remember when we were hanging out. I think it was the Super Bowl with the Niners and Ravens, and I was talking to you, talking to your dad, and you
Yeah.
both told me a similar story about how he took you and your siblings out to the local fields and said something to the equivalent of, you know, this is hard work. If you don't want to work this hard, you need to get an education and be a lifelong learner. Can you clarify anything with that and expand upon that and tell that story?
Yeah, there's I think in your life you have pivotal lessons and points, right, that change the way that you look at things. And that was one of the 5, I would say, that really my dad did for us. It gave us that gift of that conversation and that experience. So what my dad did is, he's a first generation American. I'm a first generation American. My dad was an immigrant, became a citizen, and he worked in the Bay Area, so he commuted for us. So the first thing my dad ever did is decided to commute for us to give us a better life, slow our life down a little bit. And what he would do is he would come home on the weekends, and in this summer he decided to take a job out in the fields, picking cherries, and then another weekend picking he's picking peaches. And my dad never really worked in the fields, and he didn't really need to work in the fields, but he did it because he wanted to take us out there to kind of see how hard the work was and put a value to money, right? So we would go and want to buy a pair of jeans for $20, and he says, "Hey, I want you to know that this is 4 hours worth of work for somebody," right? At that point, right? So he wanted to teach us that lesson and make it real. So he took us out to the fields, and man, we worked hard for weekends, and we would get $5 every barrel of cherries that we would fill up. And I remember filling up 4 big barrels and getting $20 at the end of the day. And it was a long, hard work day. And my dad gave us the $20, didn't take anything from it. And he told us, he actually, whenever he took us the second time to go pick peaches, those were the hard ones because you got fur all over your hands and it's very itchy. And it was totally not worth the money, but it was worth the lesson. Because my dad on the way home, he says, "Daniel, if you don't want to work this hard, you gotta focus on looking at opportunities, getting an education, and always basically being a lifelong learner. Like look at life and always be learning, always be reading, trying to educate yourself and better yourself, or else you're gonna be working this hard." So he did 2 things. He gave me the education on the value of that and also the value of money, right? So now I remember after that going to the store with my mom and saying, "Well, shoot, I really don't want to buy that because I would quantify it by the buckets of cherries I would have to fill up. Well, it's like 4 buckets of cherries. That's not worth it, right?"
Right.
So, but that was it's just one of those things that my dad did that really taught us a lesson. And I asked myself that all the time too, because, we've done a little better for ourselves. So we tend to want to give our kids everything we didn't have. And then it's really not about giving them what we didn't have. It's giving them what we had that made us who we are today, right? My experience has made me the man I am today. And it just needs to be purposeful. My dad made it a point to embrace the suck and go out there and work in the fields to teach his kid a lesson. Could have been a lot easier for my dad. He says, "I don't want to do that. I want football, hang out with my kids." But he's like, "No, I'm going to make this a purposeful experience for my kids." And so I'm doing the same thing for my kids. Like this to this date. I mean, we were chatting a little bit before of we don't have a landscaper anymore. My son and I do the lawn landscaping with my son. I have apartments around town. We do the landscaping on the apartments. So on a Sunday, it might take me 6 hours of work. I bring him and a couple of his buddies, and I pay them. So they get $40 to $60 on a day of work. But I much rather do 100 different things. Like I didn't even own lawn equipment this year. I had to go buy it because I'm like, you know what? I got to teach my kid this lesson. And some of the lessons that we teach them have to be purposeful, and I have to sacrifice to give my kid that lesson, because the first thing I want to do is enjoy my lawn service, enjoy the weekend, hang out, have a good time. But then I tend to miss the lessons that my dad gave me when I was younger. So this year I called it embracing the suck. So I've been doing lawns since June, and I'm like, oh man, now I have all these kids that want to do the lawns with us. So it's become a really good bonding moment. But I could see these kids think of that when they're thinking about buying a Fortnite skin or a game or something. They're like, right. Oh shoot, I'm like, that's 2 weekends I gotta work. You know what? I'm gonna
pass. For a Fortnite skin. Come on, it's not even crazy. A physical item.
Yeah. So, but that's if I would say that's probably one of the top 5 moments that my dad did for me. That really changed the trajectory of my life, and it's something that I try to teach my kids every day.
No, that's huge. And one thing I noticed right off the bat with your family, I'm so blessed to have been invited into your home and have been there for some great family moments, is how close you all are and how respectful and generous. I think those are qualities and virtues that may be missing in a lot of family households. And it pleases me so much to hear that you're nurturing that and fostering that within your own family, and you're not being so hard on your own children for no reason. You're challenging them and presenting them with opportunities to learn the value of something that they otherwise may not if it were just given to them, which would be a disservice. I love how you quantified that and clarified that for the audience. And I'm thinking, Man, you got a ministry on your hands. I need to get my kiddo out there too and join you. We got a lawnmower, we got a blower,
Yeah,
we got some rakes, shovels, right? If we need to pick any weeds, we got some spray that's organic. If you need that too, hey, we'll come
yeah,
out
man.
there. Um, Going back to your educational journey, one person that comes to mind is Mr. Laux. I
Mhm.
remember meeting him at your house and also meeting him at church where we all attend. And
Mhm.
he's a great man, generous man, and the way he spoke about education with such passion and zeal really inspired me. This was before I became a teacher. It was people like him that also
Mhm.
influenced me. Like, I can do this. It's not as hard as I think. You just got to get out there and do it and really hustle as like you've done your whole life and in the real estate market. Can you talk about how
Yeah.
that relationship with Mr. Laux came about and how
Mhm.
it really blossomed and how you guys ended up being neighbors and continuing that
Yeah.
relationship?
Yeah. So I think relationship is the key word, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I think the way you teach your kids, and so for parents, this is for parents, or for teachers, you could. This is a big thing for teachers too. I see it in my kids, right? And I always think they're like, okay, discipline, right? So if you're gonna teachers, you sometimes are forced to discipline kids or have some form of authority towards the kids. But authority or discipline without relationship equals rebellion, right? It's like if you don't
Mm-hmm.
build that relationship with your child and you discipline, the first thing you want to do is rebel, right? The kids are going to rebel. They're like, I have no relationship. He's being stern, stern, stern. Same things go with our faith, Scott. Like without a relationship with Christ, we rebel, right?
Right.
Um, the teacher is the same way with Mr. Laux. He understood that. Like he was a relationship teacher and he took the time to spend and get to know us. So we did not rebel because we had that relationship. Like there was times that Mr. Laux would come to my house to discipline my brother, to come and talk to my parents and talk to my brother outside of school. And he formed that relationship with us that we didn't want to disappoint him. Like we didn't want to rebel to what he said because we had that relationship with him, right? So that continued, and he cared enough to build that relationship with us. And when somebody cares enough, like if a father cares enough to get down to the even denominator of their kid, right? Remember, the
Mm-hmm.
dad's here, the kids are here. We need to get down to their communication level, not the kid come to us, right? Same thing
Right.
with teachers. If you're a teacher here, you need to come down to that child's level to speak to them. And then they're going to respect that and you're going to build a relationship here. He was able to do that with us. And fortunately, he built us up, right? So Mr. Laux, through my high school, I mean, I had him in not in middle school. He had my sister, my brothers, everybody in middle school. He got to a point where when we were getting scholarships, Oscar Del Valle, which is a doctor now, my sister, she's an NP, his brother, which is a doctor as well. He helped us with applications for scholarships. They got the Gates Millennium Scholarship. I mean, it took time to build that relationship and do that for these kids, right? And he cared enough to do that, which built that relationship. So we never wanted to disappoint him. He became a second father figure to us that we wanted to excel, to kind of, in respect to him. And when I went into the service and I came back out of the service and I was in real estate, he'd be the one that was on me about saving money, investing in property, and I would help him invest in properties. I was helping him buy property, and anything he said, I listened to because he had that relationship, right? If I didn't have that relationship with him, I'd probably
Mm-hmm.
be like, I don't know, I'm 24 years old. I know more than you do. You're an old timer. I don't need to listen to you. But I had that relationship. I respected everything that he said. And I was able to help him buy a bunch of property, and I bought a bunch of property. And he called me one day and he says, hey, Daniel, the house behind me is going to be listed for sale. You need to buy this house, right? So this is where relationship comes from. He's like, authority, you need to buy this house, right behind him. And no questions asked, no problem. And I bought it. And we became neighbors for 10 years. we took down a fence and put a friendly fence. So we had a fence, that a gate that went in between my house and his house. And we would just walk over. My son would walk over, and we built this amazing relationship. very, very important mentor in my life, and has been like a father figure to me, a friend to me, and a mentor to many, many people, because he cared enough to form a relationship with his students. And we always never wanted to disappoint him, and he just became a friend to a lot of us.
That's amazing and so cool to see that relationship grow or hear about it, and to go from student to neighbor to friend and lifelong friend and mentor, really, right? And it's so neat. I love being at this stage in my life where I'm able to give back and provide a service for others that have helped me, people that have helped me grow along the way. And now I'm helping them either on phone calls with tech support, that's generally how I help, or advice about a situation, like here's how to proceed with this, here's who I contact on these things, you need to do this, and having them be advisable by me. It's something I take seriously, and it comes down to those relationships. And you're absolutely right. Even though you're not a classroom teacher, that's the number one thing I start with in education. I have a saying. And made a poster for it with my buddy Phil Pooley, and it says Maslow before Bloom's and then tech. So I'm a big tech guy, but I never put tech out there in front of anything else. And basically Maslow has these hierarchy of needs, and it's all about relationship building, and then Bloom's is kind of the more technological pedagogical stuff in education, like the frameworks you're going to do in how to introduce what's called the 4 C's. Let's see if I can remember them. Creativity, communication, I always have to look them up. Collaboration, and there's one more, communication. If I didn't say that, I'm pretty sure I missed one, but they're all really important, and those are embedded in those frameworks. But you need the relationships first, and I think about that. So I had a student last year, the father was in jail, and the student was very disconnected, and even though that student didn't reach any academic heights, I supported that student to the best of my abilities, and they wrote me an awesome note, and the mom thanked me too. And we don't get a lot of thanks in education, so when we do, I take it to the bank, and still just using that to fuel my passion for education. And now going from the classroom to this ed tech coach role, I'm really trying to expand my influence. And that brings me back to you. You've really been able to do that, even though you may seemingly be just a real estate agent. You're so much more. You're a public speaker, you're a dad, you're a triathlete, right? And quite a good one at that too. It's not just something you do, but you compete in those triathletes or triathlons. Sorry, and that requires such discipline. I know you get up early. You're training right away before work. You're doing work. You're balancing life as well with your family, making that time for your family, checking in, and it's come at a sacrifice, but so cool to see it pay off. How did you know you would reach the heights that you've reached and are going to reach when you first started?
No, I don't think anybody. I don't think. I mean, I think we have hopes and dreams, but I think I always just focused on just getting better, right? So it goes back to I think that's where, like, SMART goals. People talk about SMART goals, right? Where they're measurable, attainable, realistic goals, trackable, timeline goals.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy for us to say, okay, I want to achieve this level of being, say, a teacher, podcast, or a triathlete, or a business, or say I want to be a better father, right? Say I want to be a better father. I want to be a great father, right? So this year, and we're at the end of the year, so people are probably looking at goals, and you're like, okay, well, I want to get healthier. I want to be fit. I want to be a better father. I want to be a better husband. And they put that on their goals. And what you notice is, like, you go from, you want to be all these things, and the first week, 2 weeks, a month, maybe you do very good, and all of a sudden you start falling off, and you're like, oh, I can't be that guy. So you just scratch that goal and move on, right? So what I always thought of, just being better, right? So eventually, like, I want to focus on not being a great father, but I want to be a better father. I want to just be better.
Nice.
What does that mean for me? What does that look like for me? It means, okay, maybe one-on-one conversations with my kid every week or every day. Maybe I'm doing workouts with my son in the morning now, which is another level of being better, of my journey over the last 5 years of being a better father. I'm always working on being better. And eventually your life will look back at you and say, you are a great father, right? Your kid will say, you are an amazing father. Like, it didn't happen from my resolution from 2020 to 2021 over 30 days. It happened over a stacked amount of constantly being better and eventually saying, oh my goodness, I actually accomplished a lot of the things I wanted to accomplish, but it took time, right? Like, building a business takes time. Being a better father takes time. Being a better teacher takes time. It's just saying, you just always want to strive at being better than you were yesterday, better than you were last month, and giving yourself grace, because there's going to be bad weeks. There's going to be bad months, and it's okay. You ask yourself, how can I be better? And then constantly keep striving to be better. And then your kids will look at you and say, Dad, you're a great father. Life will tell you when you've achieved it. Like, you don't have to write it. You write it on a paper and you want to achieve certain things. But if you constantly keep being better, your business will reward you. Your relationship will reward you. Your kids will reward you by telling you those things.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. And I really like how devoted you are to the grind. Somebody I follow on social media, Patrick Bet David, he talks about nobody wants to do the hard work. He said something like that. And he talks about to do the hard work and to have a successful business for many, many years, maybe 10 years, you have to work 80 to 100 hours. And I've seen you so committed and cranking out the time for the business. And now it's so cool to see you're at a place to where you can reinvest some of that time back in your family when it matters, as they're growing and flourishing, like what you're doing with your son with the workouts, with the lawn service for your apartments. You're teaching them business, life skills, right? Number one thing I would hear from students is, we need a life skills class. So that's something I would try to integrate within my English class. Okay, we're going to do what's called project-based learning, and this is your opportunity to start an entrepreneurial business. You got to involve the community. So I'd have them seek out a mentor. If they were doing a business, I would give them some guidelines because I had some insight into that. Now, definitely have not been a successful business person. I've failed all along the way, but I've learned. And one of the things I've learned is you have to be ready to pivot quickly, especially with trends, and to not be afraid. When do you think in your life you learned that lesson? And maybe it's not one point in time, but I know you've shared a lot of your personal story with me in the past. You've had some tough things to deal with. When do you think that happened?
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to be with just not taking things personally, right? Embracing, we used to say in the military, embracing the suck. It's supposed to be hard, right? If it was easy, everybody would do it. All these one-liners, right? But it's true, right? It's supposed to be hard. And when you fail, you want to fail forward. So you see all these little key words that almost sound rehearsed to me are just my mindset. I've constantly said them to myself. So if something sets me back, doesn't go as planned, I'm like, don't take it personally. Don't make any assumptions. What can you learn from this? It's supposed to be hard. If it's hard, it's because you're doing it right? So there's all these things that you have to program within yourself in being a lifelong learner, knowing that it's always going to be awkward. When you're learning, it's always awkward. And if it's awkward, it's okay, right? And then failing forward, right? So I don't think there's ever been a time where I've said, well, why me? Why did this happen to me, right? It was always like, okay, what can I learn from this? Doing rapid discovery, pivoting and saying, let's go. What can I learn? And let's keep moving forward, right?
Right.
And just and just not taking things like that personally, right? Just letting it roll off, and you eventually get some thick skin, and some things that you do are going to work, some things you do are not going to work. And like, I see what you're doing, Scott, and it's you could do 50 million other things. You could say, okay, this could go wrong 50 million directions, but at the end of the day, the one thing that can go wrong is not doing anything at all.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? You want to miss every single shot. Like, it's like, if you want to miss every single shot, don't even take one. Right?
You're right.
If you want an opportunity to take 100 shots, you make 2 or 3, that's great. But if you want to make guarantee 0, don't take any. Go sit on the bench, right?
Oh.
So it just takes time to go out there and fail forward, right? And that's part of being a lifelong learner, not taking things personally. There was a book that I read it with my team just recently. It's called The 4 Agreements. And one of the first agreements is be impeccable with your word, right?
Mm-hmm.
What that means is, we think, okay, be impeccable with the words that you speak to others, but be impeccable with the words you speak to yourself. Like, I am not good enough.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not worthy enough, right? I can't do this. You're not smart enough. You don't know tech enough. I don't have the time, right? So we have to start changing those programmed words that we think every single day, and being impeccable with the words we speak to ourselves, right? But anyways, it was a great book, and it talks about not taking things personally. It talks about not making any assumptions, and always doing the best you can,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you're going to dedicate an hour at something, don't half do it. I mean, go all in on it and do the best you can do, right? And then that's in a nutshell. I mean, I don't think it ever gets easy. I hope I answered your question.
No, you totally did. And there's so much to unpack in that small little segment there that you delivered for us and gave us, in a nice little package here. You talked about being all in. One of my friends in education, Tara Martin, she's an author of a couple books. She talks about cannonballing in. I think first image that comes to mind is, his name's escaping me right now, but the heavier set kiddo from Sandlot, right? He just goes all in, cannonballs in that scene, soaks everybody. Right? He's not concerned about fear, getting kicked out, nothing. He wants to do that, and he's going to do that. Now, you can argue whether or not that's appropriate to do in a public place, right? But the point being, there is no fear, and you got to cannonball in. I like what you said about embrace the suck, and I'm going to ask you if you're down to talk about this. I can think of a time in your military history that you shared with me where you embraced the suck, and something really good came out of it. I forget where you were stationed, but you had to go to some place that was very cold. Do you know which situation I'm talking about?
Yeah, that's what my wife's situation.
Yeah. Are you good to talk about that, or is that too personal?
Yeah,
okay.
Let's talk about it.
Okay, yeah. So,
let's talk about
break
it.
down that story, because you definitely embraced the suck on that one, and it worked out.
Yeah, I think a lot of it, and these are all things that I think as teachers and parents, we could start programming in my kids' minds, right? That's another pivotal moment, a conversation that I had with my mom. And,
Mm-hmm.
and she was very, very clear with her words, and it really impacted me, right? So, I was in the service, and I was a cop. So one of the worst things you could do is get stationed in Minot, North Dakota. Nuclear missiles on the ground, very, very cold. If you ever got in trouble, they'd say they're going to ship you to Minot, right? And I was always the doer, the achiever, and helping all the sergeants do everything. And everybody thought I was going to get stationed in California. And then, so we're all standing in a squad, and they're reading orders off, and my orders come in. They read it like 10 of them a day, right? And this happens,
Mm-hmm.
it's like opening a present. Hey, you're going to Okinawa, or you're going to North Carolina, or you're going to wherever, right? And then mine came up, and everybody thought they're gonna hear California, and my sergeant looks at me, he says, "Come up." And I'm thinking, like, I'm gonna come up, and he's gonna say, "Hey, Daniel's going to California. Look at him. He's doing a great job," right? And he tells me, he's like, "Hey, go to your room, read it, and take as much time as you need." And I'm like, "What?" So then I go to my room, and on my way to my room, I open this thing up, and it says Minot, North Dakota, and my heart sank. I'm like, I don't even know where this place is. I just know it sucks, right?
Right.
So I'm 18 years old. I think my world's ending, right?
Mm-hmm.
Thinking I'm supposed to be coming back to California, and I'm not. And I called my mom. First call I made, I was crying.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, son, it's like everything happens for a reason, right? And I'm sitting there, I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. He's like, look, just go there and just do the best you can. Everything happens for a reason. I really didn't really understand it. Now I prayed for the longest time. I'm a very spiritual guy, so prayed. I had, I was very involved with my youth group and all this other stuff. So for me, I thought personally that I was being punished by God, right? I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
why am I being punished, right? Like, why didn't
What
He
I
answer this
do.
prayer for me to go back to California? I've never been out of California like that. Next, I'm in Texas, and I'm getting shipped off to North Dakota. Like, my world's gonna end, right? But anyways, I go up and fast forward 4 years, I end up meeting my partner, my as a cop, Dave. I meet his sister. He's from South Dakota, and we date for like 6 months. And fast forward, we've been together for 20 years and been married, and now have 3 kids. So one of the lessons there is embracing that and always going there and with an open mind and open heart is sometimes God's biggest blessings are the unanswered prayers, right?
Yes, yes.
So that's one thing. I'm so glad He didn't answer that prayer and sent me to California. God knows what I'd be doing now. But the biggest blessing I had is He didn't answer that prayer, and I didn't understand what my mom said on the phone. It's just it's just like, hey, just go and do the best you can. Everything happens for a reason, but it does. All the lessons happen for a reason. It's whether you're willing to go in there open with an open heart and open mind and say, okay, how can I learn from this? How can I do the best I can here? And then just have faith that things are supposed to happen how they're supposed to happen. Right?
Yeah.
So that's the story. Yeah.
No, what a great story. That kind of came to mind when you were talking about embracing the suck. I'm like, oh, we didn't talk about this off air. I hope he's good. It's such a good story, right? If you're talking about like a Romeo and Juliet, even more than Romeo and Juliet, because they die in the end. That's a horrible ending, but think of like the greatest love story of all time. That's like one of those, seriously. And behind your success, it's really your wife's success, because I've seen her work hard alongside you and with you, and my wife does the same thing, and you two have really served as models for us. We decided, okay, we're doing well, we like where we're at, but we want a little bit more. We're going to have to sacrifice on this work-life balance a little bit to get it. And so we're in the midst of it, and it's a lot. I could not do it alone, that's for sure, because when I'm weak, I rely on her to be strong for me, or to encourage me and to say, hey, it's going to be okay, or just to be there. She's such a source of joy, as I know your wife is for you too. So and the kids too that we have together, I mean, they're my largest source of joy. Our newest one,
They're a pain in the butt too.
yes.
They're like sweet and sour patches, right?
Yeah.
They're a little sour, and eventually they get nice and sweet. They're like, oh, you're so cute. It's like, why did you do that? Oh, but you're just so darn cute, right?
Did nail. Yeah, there are some rough things. I was on a call earlier, and my wife had to be gone. She needed to go run an errand, so I'm working over here, got the kids over in the other room, and there was an issue with going potty for the youngest one, and he's screaming at the top of his lungs, and I'm trying to deal with that. Hit in pause, asking the client I'm helping to just hold on for a moment. It's not always picture perfect, right? Takes a lot of work, patience, a lot of love, but at the end of the day, one of my buddies, my buddy Billy, when I was going to school, he said, when you walk in that door and you hear daddy, 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 you're gonna forget about everything that happened at work, and it's just gonna just fill you so much. And he was so true. And I remember the first time I had that. I've lost touch with Billy since. I thought of him instantly. The first time I heard that, I was like, Billy was right. Kids, they're a lot of work, no doubt, but they bring you so much joy as well. And as we kind of start to close, I want you to share about what you're doing with your own children's education. I really liked when we had talked, off camera about some of the project-based learning and design thinking
Mhm.
that you're doing for your kiddos. Can you talk about what you're
Yeah.
doing and how you came up with that? Because I think it's really cool for educators to hear what's possible and maybe what's lacking from the current system.
Sure. Yeah. So we've been homeschooling our kids for 3 years now. So we're kind of, that's one of those things we're just failing forward, right?
Yeah.
we're messing up our kids. But, we do a lot through, we're trying to help them be lifelong learners, right? Learning on the road. My business is very difficult. It takes a lot of time. So when I could break away, it's not really when the school system allows me to break away. So I was able to bring my kids into my world, and my wife was willing to handle that. So it's been amazing. But some of the things that we've been really trying to do is trying to have more Socratic discussions with our kids, right? And then just helping them be lifelong learners, thinking through certain projects and processes. I know like one of the things that we just did is we bought one of those little miter saws that you can't chop your finger on, right? So some of the projects that we're doing with our kids is the first thing is saying, okay, let's build something so we could see how something is built. So initially we draw it out, we build it, they carve it, and they see it, they design it, and it looks really, really cool, right? And then we do things like, okay, well, when this is something we were talking about the next step is getting a 3D printer. So now they know how to build it with their hands, draw it from their mind to the paper to hands to make it with their hands. Now can they use technology to help code it
Mm-hmm.
and then build it that way? So we do little things like that to help them. Like so we're going to be making a toy line that they could sell at the farmers market here in town. So that way they could say, okay, can you price the product? What would you do? How much is it going to cost you to make it? What is the design going to be? What's the model going to be? What's the logo going to be? Now that we know how much it's going to cost you, how much time it's going to take you to make it, what can you price it at? And then just get them to think of that, right? Get them to
Right.
think of, can I make something, think of something, make it, build it, sell it, product it, and then just try to teach them that, right? So
Mm-hmm.
there are little things that we do with our kids. And so one of the curriculums that we follow is Acton Academy. They're out of Austin, Texas. Um, so we actually went through their system and got accredited as a school, even though we just homeschool, because we wanted to get their curriculum, right, of the hero's journey and lifelong learning lessons. So these are like some of those, so they call them the launches that they do. But we try to do a lot of that with our kids, just to kind of, I think we forget to make things, to think that we could think of things and make things ourselves, right? We rely on too many other things to do things for us, and we tend to lose focus on, hey, we could actually make things ourselves, right?
Right.
Your 3D printer is amazing. Like you showed me some of those things that you did. I'm like, man, that's pretty amazing. You could actually make that. You could code it in, you could put it all together, and you can make it. You don't have to wait for somebody from China to make it for you and ship it. Like you can make it, right? So just getting that mindset on my kids of just constantly asking questions and finding different ways to ask them questions to get them to think a little different, and just teach them how to be financially more responsible and just aware. So that's something that we've been really passionate about. My wife, she was a nurse. She just delivered babies like your wife, Scott.
Mm-hmm.
And she gave up her career to raise her kids and to be the CEO of her home, right? And when you're a driver or you're doing things, you tend to see, okay, well, they always say that when you're blazing your path, you look back and there's a trail of blood, sweat, and tears, right? But they're not yours. They're usually your family and kids, right? You think
Yes,
as an
yes,
entrepreneur, they're
yes.
my blood, sweat, and tears, but they're not. They're sacrificing with you. They're with you. They're on the road with you. They're doing all this with you. Your wife is sacrificing her career. There's spending time with the kids. Homeschooling is difficult. Spending time like my dad with us to teach us purposeful lessons. Those are difficult things. It's a lot easier not to do it, right? So that's just something that we do. We're trying to teach our kids how to be lifelong learners and trust but verify, ask questions, have Socratic discussions. You know what I mean? So that's been our journey. It's been pretty amazing. My wife's been great teaching the kids.
I love hearing about that, and I can't wait to see what happens next in the next couple of chapters of the Del Real family and with the Del Real group. Where can our listeners find the Del Real group? We have quite the following in California and Nevada, especially, and I know you do business all over and can help out a bunch of our listeners. Where can they find you at?
Yeah, you could look us up on Facebook, thedelrealgroup.com, or on Instagram if you just want to get inspired with some of our social media content and what we put out there. I mean, it's fun to follow us around. You could find me if you want on Instagram it's Daniel Del Real at Instagram. So or if you want to look up my phone number, email, I'm easy to get hold of.
Yes, and I love that. I love the content that you're publishing too. Who are some people, as we close, that inspired you? I know we talked about Gary Vee as being one. Who are some other professionals that you could maybe shout out real quick as we close?
Gary Vee is an amazing guy to follow. We did Tony Robbins. I took my whole team and their spouses on a Tony Robbins conference a couple years ago. Walk through fire and all that stuff. Like if for mindset, Tony Robbins is amazing guy to follow. So those two are
where it's at.
Worth the follow. Ed Milet is another great guy. If you want to find somebody to follow on YouTube, he has really great content, very inspirational, very positive. Ed Milet's been great. I got to meet him this year, and my wife was she loves him, always listens to his content, and she got to meet him. So she kind of left me to the side, and she got a picture with him. So she has that to brag on me all the time. But he's also been great.
That's great. And I want to remind the listeners too, something I forgot to give you kudos for is you and your team have been the top real estate group in the area for 10 years, right?
Yeah. 10 years in a row.
So if you need any help buying, selling, or you just want to see all the cool things that Daniel and his group and his family are doing, check them out on social media. Daniel, thanks so much for being on Education Today. I appreciate you, brother.
Hey, I appreciate the friendship, man. I honor you. Thank you so much for everything that you're doing, Scott.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to Education Today. It is my pleasure to share with you all. Let's stay connected on Twitter. You can find me at Mr. Noons Teach. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast on the player of your choice and give Education Today a positive review on Apple Podcasts. Remember, everyone, out here in this field of education, it's grind time.